Here's why I think the Miami Dolphins have a great shot of picking with that number one overall pick. And the first thing you got to think about is the whole tanking issue. There was a lot of talk in this offseason. They kind of didn't really add a lot. The talent level on this team isn't that good. You kept hearing leading up to the 2019 NFL draft they were going to pass on the quarterbacks this year, and they were looking to that 2020 class. And that brings up the idea of, are they trying to tank for one of these quarterbacks? And I don't think that's true, but it's something that you got to kind of keep in the back of your mind. They've got a new head coach in Brian Flores, coming from the New England Patriots, defensive-oriented coach. Their offensive coordinator comes from the New England Patriots. So they've got a lot of that Patriot type of feel to them. Now, they also traded let's look at the quarterback position. They traded for Josh Rosen, a late second-round pick. I was a huge Josh Rosen fan coming out of college. He was a guy that I thought was the best quarterback in the draft. I liked him over Sam Darnold, over Baker Mayfield, over Josh Allen. Hey, I thought he has been one of the better quarterbacks to come out in the last several years. Now, he struggled last year with the Arizona Cardinals, but how much of that is for him to blame on him? The Cardinals didn't have a good offensive line. They didn't have very many weapons. Their play calling was mediocre. Now Rosen is coming into the Dolphins. Now Ryan Fitzpatrick's there, so you're going to have a battle between those two. But if you think about it this way, they're going in on Rosen. They didn't trade a second-round pick to get Josh Rosen to have him sit behind Ryan Fitzpatrick. They want to see what they have in him this year to determine whether they are going to be drafting a quarterback in the 2020 NFL draft. So Rosen's going to get every chance he can get. Now, I was pretty high. I'm still high on Rosen, don't get me wrong. But I was even more optimistic because they had brought in David Caldwell to kind of be the quarterback's coach. Caldwell, had done well in his stints previously working with quarterbacks, so I was pretty excited about that partnership. But as we've learned recently, David Caldwell is taking not necessarily a leave of absence, but he's taking a step back because of some health issues. He's still going to be around the team, but not as much as he would have been as the quarterback's coach. So it's kind of a bummer. You want David Caldwell to be healthy, and I hope he is. But I was really looking forward to seeing how those two guys would be paired up together. Other than that, you have the who is Rosen's weapons, right? He's running a lot of the same issues that he had with the Arizona Cardinals. The offensive line, besides Laramie Tunsil, is pretty question mark. Chris Reed and Jesse Davis at guards, Daniel Kilgore at center, Jordan Mills at right tackle. I know they drafted Michael Dieter, and he's probably going to start at some point in there, whether it's left guard or center, but it's not like they have this star-studded offensive line that's going to keep Rosen clean. Now, let's take a look at this. Their receivers. That was one of the big issues with Josh Rosen in Arizona. They didn't have any receivers. He doesn't have many receivers here also. Devontae Parker is considered their number one receiver, or probably it's Kenny Stills. Neither of them are great. Kenny Stills is a better role player who's just that deep threat. That's when he had his most success with the Saints, is when he was, that deep threat for that offense. And he's kind of a one-dimensional player, but when he can just do that, he's fine. But because Devontae Parker has never developed into this number one, or even in all reality, a quality number two, Kenny Stills has kind of had to be their primary target. Devontae Parker for the longest time has been this breakout candidate, but has yet to ever break out, whereas Bryce Butler is their third receiver, and they didn't really draft anybody else. They brought in Albert Wilson. He'll be a slot receiver for them, but, nothing spectacular. Trent Irwin from Stanford was college free agent. Preston Williams has a ton of talent, but he's got so many off-the-field issues, tested poorly at his pro day, so he's just kind of a flyer at this point. Defensively, I like their secondary. Xavier Howard's probably one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, consistently underrated. Minka Fitzpatrick is shown that he could be a player in this league. T.J. McDonald, Rashad Jones. The secondary is pretty solid. But what about the rest of them? This defense isn't very good. Where are they gonna get their sack production from? Charles Harris was a first round pick a few years ago. He hasn't developed into a quality pass rusher. Jonathan Woodward's their projected start at the other side. I know they have Tank Carradine, who never had, has kind of just been a depth player. He was a guy that got hurt early on, and going into his senior year of college, was drafted as a redshirt candidate, just never has panned out. I love the draft pick of Christian Wilkins, who they took in their first round pick. He'll start day one. He'll be easily their best defensive lineman. But he's going to get a lot of double teams, and he's going to get a lot of attention because guys like Devin Gottschall and Adolphus Washington and Charles Harris and all those guys aren't going to be able to take the pressure off of him. Linebackers, Jerome Baker, they get Raekwon McMillan back, who they drafted a couple years ago, who got hurt during his rookie year. Kiko Alonso is still there. So, those guys, there's some talent there, but is it quality NFL talent? So I think when you take all this defense, you've got some pieces, especially in the secondary. You got a good piece in Christian Wilkins. They're a few years off from where they need to be. They need to get some free agents in here. They need to draft some edge players, some impact players on defense, and they just don't have it right now. So overall, I think the biggest reason why the Dolphins have a chance to pick number one overall is because they just don't have the defense for it. They don't have the talent for it. And there's pieces. There's guys like Minka Fitzpatrick and Xavier Howard and Christian Wilkins and potentially Josh Rosen, but there's just not enough of them. And not only is there not enough elite players, they lack a lot of those solid starters. They're starting a lot of rotational guys on other teams.